Welcome to On Texas Football, a little Sunday edition. I'm CJ Vogel, joined by Gerry Hamilton. We're going to be talking a little bit about the portal, some Texas entries, some Texas departures, but also what's going on at Texas A&M and Oklahoma, because those are big games for Texas, big rivals. You keep it close on your enemies, Gerry. Of course, this episode brought to you by Britt Robin as well. So we'll get into that here in a bit, Gerry. But before we dive into the portal, a quick word about Britt Robin and our sponsor for today.
Yeah, special thanks to Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute for sponsoring On Texas Football. Great new sponsor to the show. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacement. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for top-notch orthopedic specialists, give Dr. Robin a call today, 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love.
Perfect. Thank you, Gerry. And thank you, Dr. Robin, for sponsoring a little portal talk today, Gerry, because, of course, it's never going to stop. Never stops until December 28th, and then you'll hear about it in the spring once more. But Texas sitting right now with 8 departures in its current portal class, 3 incoming players, and we'll talk about those coming up. But, Gerry, first off, let's talk about it. The departures right now, Texas has been hit on the defensive line, that linebacking core. No starts out of the 8 combined right now. I think it's worth mentioning that. But a couple pieces that maybe you would have liked to see stick around and maybe test your luck with development once more.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. The way I look at it, and Texas hasn't lost, like you said, nobody that started a game. Nobody that's really been an impact player on the last 2 college football playoff teams. So that's actually a really good spot to be if you're Texas. That doesn't mean these guys aren't good players. I mean, Zach Swanson's in the rotation for Arizona State. Xavier Alfred from the 2020 class is a really good safety for Arizona State. Jake Smith's in the rotation. I mean, guys, Texas has lost guys off their roster. SMU has got multiple guys, Logan Parr, Moochie Dixon, that are in the college football playoffs that were once at Texas. So if guys transfer out of Texas, Prince Dorbit, Arizona State, we're not saying they're not really good players. Texas is a hard lineup to crack now. If you can't do it in 2 years, I mean, it's tough at that point with the way Texas is recruiting and the fact that they're a blue blood in the portal. So they've lost some talented players, but players that haven't broken through to make an impact for the Longhorns. That's a really good place to be if you're Steve Sarkisian, considering the 3 additions, CJ, are impact guys that are going to impact winning at multiple positions, and you could have multiple starters already out of these 3.
Yeah, Andre Carrick, another one starting at left tackle over at Tennessee. Yeah. But talking about those incoming transfer portals, of course, Jack Bomeister out of Utah, a big one. You go out to Purdue at a big-time defensive lineman. Let me get your thoughts there, Gerry, because Texas, look, they need 4, right? You lost 3 already. You're losing another 4 to either graduation or NFL draft. Let me get your thoughts on the portal addition so far.
Yeah, Cole Brevard, I think, is a big one. Over 520 snaps as a 0 tech in Power 4 football. Sadir Mitchell has 36 this year. I mean, So that's how much experience this guy has, Cole Brevard. 4 years in a college strength and conditioning program, 2 at Penn State, obviously 2 at Purdue, now headed to Texas. But 6'3", 335. Athletic 335, but a true over-the-ball, 0 shade, tilt type of player, which Texas really needs in this portal class, especially considering the 3 guys they signed out of high school are more 3-tech, 5-techs right now, even though I think in time a Josiah Sharma or Myron Charles can play over the ball from time to time, scheme dependent, kind of where you're at with who you're playing, opponent dependent, I should say. But Cole Brevard, I think he's a big addition because now Texas go after a 3-tech in the portal, a Lee Hunter from UCF who's visiting early next week, right? And then a 3rd guy as a rotational piece, maybe that can play both. See who maybe comes open later in the portal at that. That takes a little pressure off of Texas headed into the Lee Hunter visit from UCF this week. But I love that addition of Cole Brevard. I think it matches. I think he's a starter level player for Texas for sure. He started last 22 games. He was healthy at Purdue. Missed 2 this year, but started 12 2 years ago and 10 this year. So started 22 games in a row when healthy. Then Jack Burmeister, it's a 2-time all-conference player in the portal. How many? You can count on one hand how many of those guys there are in the portal. First team all Pac-12 punter, second team all Big 12 punter. He's going to come in and impact winning right away. Also a holder, so he can help you there. Has actually ran a couple of fakes as a holder. And then Brad Spence, CJ, he's one of the fastest ascending linebackers in the SEC. Out of Klein Forest High School, guy Texas really liked in high school, but they didn't offer him at the time. He went from 16 tackles, an interception, return for a touchdown in year 1 at Arkansas to becoming the PFF not top graded linebacker in week 13 in the SEC. 54 tackles, I believe 6.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He ended the season on a run as well. 19 tackles and 3 sacks, a sack in each of the last 3 regular season games. That started Texas, 7 tackles and a sack. Then La Tech, he had a great game. Then at Missouri, he had another strong game. So he's playing his best football as he enters the portal, and a guy that's growing up really quickly. And CJ, with Texas, you have the snap breakdown. He can play off the ball. You could play him in that Trey Moore spot off the edge a little bit.
Yep.
He is a really versatile linebacker.
That I was going to go that direction with you next year on Brad Spence specifically, because look, he can play middle of the field. He did that quite a bit at Arkansas, but you can also use him in a variety of blitzes. I know Texas was able to do that with Anthony Hill, and you pair them up with Colin Simmons and Trey Moore this year. Well, it becomes quite a hassle for opposing offensive lines. Spence, with his blitzing ability, with his ability to get the quarterback down on the ground, that adds to that same variety. And now pairing him up with a Leon Galafal, a Ty Anthony Smith, and Anthony Hill, obviously you're able to maintain that same level of blitzing ability there. Do you see him in that kind of variety role where you can throw him basically anywhere in that front 7?
I do, headed into spring practice. We'll see how he takes to the Texas scheme, right? But you mentioned, I love that 4 linebackers. That is a really solid 4 linebackers. I think Ty Anthony Smith can be a big time player in year 2. Yeah, Brad Spence going into year 3, Anthony Hill going into year 3, LaFau going into year 3. Suddenly, you lose Benda, you lose Blackwell, you lose that experience. But I'm here to tell you, I think they may be better next year at linebacker than they were this year. With those 4 guys, I mean, Brad Spence is going to be he's going to be on NFL draft boards next year.
Yeah, at 238 pounds is what he's listed at the Arkansas roster as well. So he's got the size to play on the edge, in the middle. He can do just that as well. But Jerry, I know we've talked about it. Look, Texas has 8 departures. They've got 3 in the incoming class out of the portal. What's your grade for this portal cycle so far for the Longhorns?
Yeah, I put an article on ontexasfootball.com this morning, and I gave him an A-, CJ. I don't know if that's where you're at, but look, you get a starting punter that was an all-conference player. You get a starting 0-level player who started 22 games at Purdue and has played 520-plus snaps over the center in Power 4 football. And you get Brad Spence, who started every game this year for Arkansas on a pretty good defense. I give Texas an A-, so which gives them the ability to end with an A+ in my eyes.
Yeah, I like it. Of course, it's very early. Texas does a lot of their portal work as the cycle kind of moves toward the end. And, hey, before we move to A&M and Oklahoma, because there's a lot going on there, Jerry, quick word on who's coming in. Eric Singleton, Lee Hunter, you mentioned him earlier, early coming in next week as well.
Yeah, and CJ, you mentioned something earlier or last week, I guess we're in Sunday, that was very impactful in my thinking. Texas' first portal edition last cycle was December 16th. They're already 3 ahead in that pace. And so Lee Hunter, the 3 tech out of UCF, he signed with Auburn out of 8 Mile, Alabama, Blunt High School, one of the most famous high schools, right, because of the name. But he was a 4-star prospect, top 100-level kid in the country coming out of Blunt High down in the Mobile area when he signed with Auburn, transferred to UCF. And he is a destructive guy. He has 113 tackles, I believe, the last 2 years from the 3-tech position for UCF. 20.5 tackles for loss. I mean, he is a playmaker. It has a couple, I think he has 5 sacks in those 2 years as well. He is a playmaker. What was he 2 years ago, CJ? I believe he was second to Devondre Sweat in tackles for loss in the Big 12. Yep. I mean, that would be a huge addition for Texas. I mean, if Texas could get Lee Hunter and pair him with Alex January and Cole Brevard and Sadir Mitchell, That's a really good starting spot. Then you have 3 really talented freshmen, and you're down to 1 need, maybe a impact guy that could play either, right? But if Texas can pull off Lee Hunter, that defensive line looks pretty good headed in next year. I mean, Lee Hunter has the most tackles on the defensive line in college football the last 2 years. I mean, that's just not what you thought we were going to be talking about if Texas can win that recruitment. Then Eric Singletary Jr. is the fastest player in the portal with 1,400 yards receiving in 2 years at Georgia Tech, who's not a high volume throwing team, but he is a playmaker with 10.3 speed, 6.68 in the 60. That's huge competition now. Ole Miss, Auburn, Miami, LSU coming into this Singleton visit. He is also from Douglasville, Georgia, an area that Tashard Choice has recruited for many years while he was at Georgia Tech. So, and Kitty Baker has familiarity there as well. So we'll see if Texas can pull off those 2 guys. I mean, and that's kind of what I said in this article. If Texas pull off those 2 guys, I'd have him as an A+ in the portal. Then you have a Takario Davis. What does he do? Does he go to the NFL? Texas will be in on him if they, as much as they choose to be. And then there's a couple of wild cards out there. Does Texas take a look at Justice Haynes? I mean, the running back from Alabama in the portal that's visiting Michigan and Ohio State. The Ohio State connection there, obviously Caleb Downs transferred from Alabama to Ohio State last year. So we'll see. But Texas is setting themselves up to have a really strong portal class.
Of course, a couple of additions that we just mentioned. Yeah, you might be sitting at an A+ when it's all said and done, but I like your grade of an A- right now. But I don't know if you'll be saying A- for what we're about to talk to, and that's Texas A&M, and that's Oklahoma. I'll pull up this graphic real quick. It's not official. This has just been the unofficial count on my end, so there might be some numbers missing on career games, career starts, but you see a pretty lengthy list out of Norman, Oklahoma. You see a lengthy list out of College Station as well, Jerry. I'll start with Oklahoma because, look, that's a lot of departures coming out, and there's not many players set to join Brent Venables in Norman next year out of the portal. What catches your eyes outside of wide receiver, who, if you're not hurt, you're leaving, it feels like right now, except for Deion Burks. There's a lot going on in Oklahoma right now.
I mean, they're getting bludgeoned, and it's the receiver core. I mean, whether injured or not, I mean, you just look at it. Nick Anderson, I mean, Andrell Anthony, Jaleel Farouk, J.J. Hester, I mean, even Brennan Thompson. That is a lot of hits to take and a lot to replace in one portal cycle. But 18 guys in to the portal right now, no additions. And the guys that have left, Jackson Arnold, Auburn, Walker, the safety, Arkansas, Rowe, the corner, K-State, Bauer Sharp, the tight end, LSU, Brennan Thompson, Mississippi State, Gary and Hatch at offensive line, Washington. They're losing guys that are going to Power 4 schools. It's not like they're losing guys that way. They just, maybe they played a little bit when somebody was hurt, like Texas. That they're losing impact players off of this team right now. And my grade's an F. I mean, you can't. They've lost. CJ, I don't know about you, but they don't have any additions right now, and they've lost so much offensively at every position. Even backup running backs have hit the portal. So now defensively, they haven't really lost their key guys. They lost 2 DBs who are talented. They lost a Deshaun McCullough cover linebacker, but they haven't lost their key guys, the Jaden Jacksons, the David Stones. So their defensive front, the Kip Lewis's at linebacker, the Ashimogo at linebacker, they've kept their best players. But this is a lot to lose off of one team and not have anybody committed right now.
And on top of these departures, look, Billy Bowman going to the NFL, Danny Stutzman going to the NFL. Yeah. They get Deion Burks back, so that's one. But Jerry, I don't know. I don't know what that 2025 roster looks like unless they go out and find a portal spree. And right now, that's not the case. Losing to Minnesota for recruits, they're not doing a great job. But hey, it's early. There's still 2 weeks left in the portal per se. Got to turn it around there. You mentioned an F on a grade. It's not pretty. We'll see what they can turn around there as well. I don't think it's very pretty in Norman, but going to College Station as well, because look, there's some interesting names out of College Station headed over into the portal as well. Trying to move it over here. You see the career starts here. But moving over to Texas A&M, look, you've seen some big departures there as well. Up to 16 now headed out into the portal. They've added some pieces, so not necessarily on the same page as Oklahoma, but in comparison to who's leaving and who's coming in, Jerry, that list is much longer on the export list at the moment.
Yeah, obviously Connor Weigman is the main name because he's a quarterback, even though he lost his job. He's going to Houston. But TJ Shanahan, who started some games, Cam Dewberry, who started some games on the interior, that puts a little pressure on you to hit the portal interior offensive line. They haven't lost any impact defensive players. Cyrus Allen at wide receiver was probably their second best receiver until he got hurt late in the year. Obviously, they lost some depth at tight end, a little depth at wide receiver, but they're going to make that back up in the portal. I mean, you know, the Micah Hudsons of the world, Nick Anderson from OU's of the world, Max Clare at tight end, they're fighting Texas and Oregon and Louisville for. So A&M's got some things going in the portal, and they have the NIL to bring in some really good players. But their losses come on what you see here combined with the guys going pro, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scourton, Shamar Turner off the defensive line. They have some things they're going to have to build out here because they lost a lot of depth. Like Samu, the defensive lineman going to Baylor, he hadn't played a lot, but he was an over-the-ball depth piece, right? So they lost some guys, some edge guys who, you know, were backups. So they've lost some depth here that they're going to have to build up. And that depth isn't an issue if you have all your starting frontline guys back, but they don't. But then their additions, quarterback Jacob Zeno out of San Antonio Reagan, who originally was at Baylor, then UAB, trained with Jeff Blake for years and years. But again, he's a guy who played 4 games this last year. He didn't play the rest of the season. He's a guy that can compete with Marcel Reed. Julian Humphrey at corner from Georgia got benched at the end of the season. That doesn't mean he can't be a starter or good player for A&M, but there's a reason he got passed over at Georgia too. So they didn't lose a lot of guys. Their losses aren't killers for them necessarily, but their additions to this point aren't like guys you look at and say, wow, instant upgrade either. So that's what's going to be interesting. I give A&M a C right now. We're going to see what the additions look like. That grade will come up for A&M because they have NIL money and they have a plan. But right now, their additions, CJ, aren't what you'd look at and say, wow, they've gotten a lot better at 2 different spots.
Yeah. And hey, you got a quarterback, so who knows what end up happening with Marcel Reed as well. That competition we'll see. Zeno, talk about that for a little bit because that's an interesting one. He's been in college for what will be 6 years next year. He's played 30 career games. He had a pretty good 2023 season, but look, whether it be injuries, losing his job, there's not been a consistency in his ability to stay on the field. And I don't know. I kind of see it as a guy that can push the envelope a little bit for Marcel Reed, just make sure that there is competition there, but also depth because outside of Marcel Reed, what else is on the roster at the quarterback position? It's not going to be, I believe, a 17-year-old Brady Hart who from Michigan late.
That's a great point. I saw Brady Hart in high school going to see Javion Hilson twice. And Brady Hart is 175, 180-pound kid. He physically needs a year graduating high school early. He needs time. He is not physically where you need to be to play in the SEC. He can spin the football. I'm not sure he's a great scheme fit, but he's a talented prospect, but he's not ready. So Jacob Zeno is a strong addition for them from an experience standpoint because Marcel Reed's got to build up his body too. It's hard to go through the SEC staying healthy at quarterback. And look how many injuries there were this year. Texas every year, right? So it'll be interesting to see. But Jacob Zeno is a good depth piece. If he ends up being their frontline starter, I'm not sure that's a good thing for A&M.
Yeah, of course. A lot still to happen on all fronts. Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas. We'll probably be making another video like this over the next week or two as the portal comes to a close in this first go around as well. Jerry, before I get to one last question and see who's catching your eye from the rest of the SEC, one quick word about Dr. Brett Robin.
Yeah, Dr. Brett Robin at the Austin Orthopedic Institute is a new sponsor of On Texas Football, and we're so happy to have him. Dr. Robin, a former Texas Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call at 512-856-1000 and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerry. And thank you again, Dr. Brett Robin, for sponsoring this little Sunday portal talk. Before we get out of here, Jerry, I kind of teased it a little bit, but look, we wanted to focus on Texas. We wanted to give a look at what's going on in College Station and Norman as well, but around the SEC as well. Who's kind of catching your eye and saying, okay, they're doing a pretty solid job when it comes to this first week or so in the transfer portal?
Yeah, I'm going to say LSU, and I'll let you talk about Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is number one, as they were last year. LSU, Barry Brown, look, he's got some fumbleitis, ball protection, catching issues, but he is a weapon for Garrett Nussmeier, who's returning. He adds serious speed to that wide receiver core, and he adds a guy who can return kicks as well. Bauer Sharp, the tight end from Oklahoma. A lot of starts there with Mason Taylor headed off to the NFL, or expected to head off to the NFL. Bauer Sharp, a lot of experience there. They've added Jakeem Jackson, a corner who's interesting for me. Jakeem Jackson was a starter at Florida before he got injured this year. He's out of Kissimmee, Osceola. I saw him in high school, really talented. Going to LSU, probably will be a starter for LSU if he's healthy. So I kind of like what they've done. It's early. They got to fill some holes on the defensive front too, at edge and defensive line, because they, like Texas, they signed a really good freshman class of defensive linemen, but you still need to have some experienced pieces in front of those guys.
Yeah, they've been doing a good job in terms of adding instant impact guys. And look, you teased Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to play this game every year, it feels like. You know,
Yes.
Go out there, be big spenders, find ways to revamp the roster in terms of depletion at certain positions. They're doing it once again, and I wonder how it'll work in 2025, because we saw a good Ole Miss team, but it wasn't a team that lived up to the expectations. And look, when you revamp the entire offensive line, I don't know if continuity and playing together, if that's going to backfire. And look, they're doing it again, but I like their addition so far. You go out and you add 3 players from Arkansas. I like Jalen Braxton a lot out of Frisco Lone Star. He's a big time player out on the outside. Luke Haas from Bixby, Oklahoma, good player as well. But look, Princeville Uman-Mielen, you add his brother. Princely was there last year, of course. Maynard prospect. That's one of the higher end all-around prospects in the transfer portal at defensive end. The numbers may not indicate that, but my goodness, you watch him binge, you watch him come off the edge, he can go a little bit as well. And then Deshaun Womack, another edge rusher from LSU. They're adding big-time players from pretty solid programs, Jerry. My big kind of question mark again is, what does that revamped entire offensive line look like again? Continuity on the offensive line. You'd love to see that. And it's why I think Texas is doing it the right way, keeping it in-house when it comes to what's coming up next on the offensive line. But hey, it's a good start for Ole Miss, and they're going to be big players in the portal moving forward as well. We know that. That's the kind of the way that Lane Kiffin likes to go about constructing his rosters in the common age of transfer portals. But that'll about do it for today. Jerry, any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think Texas is doing a tremendous job in the portal. The 3 guys I think they've added are impact guys, starter level players. And if they win out for a couple more of these guys, Max Clare's already been on campus at tight end, which, we'll see where that goes with A&M and Oregon. But Lee Hunter's a big one, scheduled to come in, the defensive lineman from UCF now. I mean, he is a big-time player in my estimation. And Eric Singleton, the receiver from Georgia Tech, same thing. So Texas has a chance to really become an A-plus portal winner for me. But I think they're doing a really good job right now, and I really like how the players they're attacking in the portal.
Well, good deal. That'll wrap it up for today. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm CJ Vogel, and for Dr. Brett Robin, thank you very much for sponsoring today's episode. Little Portal Talk. We'll have everything covered, Texas portal-wise and beyond on ontexasfootball.com. But y'all have a great Sunday, and we'll see y'all soon. Welcome.